starting up soon, so please do stay tuned. I'll be on here shortly, I'll be with you, pal. So please hang on, darlings, for your gremlin gal. Time moves slowly, days aren't long. We'll start here soon, but first might loop this song. Please do stay tuned. I'll be on here shortly, I'll be with you, pal. So please hang on, darlings, for your gremlin gal. Time moves slowly, days aren't long. We'll start here soon, but first might loop this song. Time moves slowly, days aren't long. We'll start here soon, but first might loop this song. Might loop this song.
Good morning. All right. Just trying to get everything ready. Let me get up my revision notes. Projects, Care Trilogy. All right. I gotta scroll down to chapter 11, because that is what we're working on today. Chapter 11 of Shape of Care. All right. Take a sip of coffee, and then we'll get to reading. All right. So let's see what the revision notes say. This chapter is doing a lot of observational groundwork. Oh shit. Thanks, Bob. I don't know what I would do without you. Oh, let me get the music started too. You know what? I think I'm going to automate the music because I just always forget about it. All right, let's do set summary. Working on chapter 11 of Shape of Care. Word prompts and working on stream setup. Happy Friday. All right. There is our summary. And that ought to get us going. All right. Let's start by reading chapter 11. Well, at least a portion of it. Let me see where the revision notes say. Go down to the song Fear, the recording. You think I should remove Pong graphics? Okay. I wonder if I could have it set up so that, well, I guess I have the Pong up so that people know it exists. Like, does it really take up a whole lot of screen space? I think I have it paced well enough, but I don't know. I guess it does take away some of the writing set up. That's what you have Botrix times commands for. True. Alright, well, we'll see what happens. Just have it show the source when someone does Pong in chat. Oh yeah, I'll have to automate that then. Or set that up, because right now I have to manually turn it off and on. Okay, let's get to reading. Chapter 11, Skin. Eleanor woke with a song resting light against her tongue. Not the melody exactly, the afterimage of it, like waking from a dream with somebody else's words in your mouth and no memory of how they got there. Wake, little seeds, wake. She lay still on the moss bed, listening for footsteps that weren't there. Listening for the hush of wings, nothing. Only the low, steady hum of the mother tree around her, as constant as blood. There should have been the moment panic arrived. A human brain in an impossible ecosystem. No exits, no signal, no control. Instead, she felt steady. Groggy, yes. Disoriented, yes. But not the clean terror she'd expected still at waking up at this place. I don't like that sentence. But not the clean terror she'd expected at waking up in this place. It sat at the edge of her mind like a thought she kept failing to finish. Fear should not be this quiet, she thought, and the thought was sharp enough to make her sit up. Wake, little seeds, wake. I think I'm going to italicize those, because those are in her head. She pressed the heels of her hands to her eyes, as if she could rub the song out. It stayed anyway. She climbed out of bed. Her phone waited in the room, quiet, cold, enormous. A rectangle of rules that belonged to a world that did not fit. She hit the power button, arms straining. The screen flared to life, and for a second she just stared at it, threw it tight. She opened the recording app and spoke. Day 5? She checked the date on the phone. Yeah, day 5. Time is difficult here. She swallowed, forcing her voice steady. 6 days to the new moon. I woke with a song in my head, not mine. Not English, I don't think. Repeating phrases. Possible morning anthem? Possible dream intrusion via some other means? If that's what that was. She paused, listening to the room. The tree did not answer. I'll come back to that later. Current observations. Homewood functions as a managed ecosystem. Closed-loop nutrient cycling. Labor allocation appears distributed. Threshold-based. Hypothesis. Root can act as sensory nodes. Balanceborn act as enforcement and maintenance. Her mouth went dry halfway through. She kept going anyway. Concern. Emotional response mismatch. I should be more afraid. I am not enough afraid. That is data. That is also terrifying. Side note, I need to get back to storage. I need my test tube if I'm going to continue collecting samples. She stopped the recording and saved it with shaking fingers. 51% battery life. Data first, panic later. That was how she'd always survived fieldwork. She turned the phone off again. The curtain stirred and Silver slipped inside with the soft ease of something born to this place. I don't really need a metaphor. We'll just say and Silver slipped inside. Good morning, she said brightly. Eleanor watched her, waiting for the fear to spike. It did not. Did you hear singing just a little bit ago? Eleanor asked. Or do I sound insane right now? Silver's eyes widened with pleased surprise. With pleased surprise. You heard it? In my head, Eleanor said. I felt like I was dreaming it. Silver nodded, solemn as a priest. You rise with us at last. The morning song, it begins the day. So you actually do have an anthem? Yes, through the great web. It is how the young learn, Silver said. Like this answered everything, and how the old remember. Mother listens. We listen. We keep the words together. Eleanor's researcher brain snapped into place. Knowledge transmission. Silver blinked. It is song. Right, Eleanor muttered. Same thing, different packaging. The notion disturbed her more than she wanted to admit. So they used songs to teach, but song also flowed across this great web. She'd heard that word before and cataloged it. It meant something important here, and she wanted to find out what that was. As they readied to leave the room, this time to the lower bowl because Eleanor was curious to see it, she probed. What's the Great Web? She asked as casually as she could, though no question had been denied her before. Still, it felt almost subversive to get an answer to every query. It is what connects us to Mother in the forest, Silver answered. You will know soon if you are able to hear the rising song. Eleanor's footsteps staggered for a moment as she was reminded all over again that what was happening to her was actively ongoing, not an end stage yet. The thought of having her mind infiltrated left her feeling cold, and she carried that feeling with her out the room, quickly compartmentalizing it, however, as they walked down the hallway. She would think more on this great web later. All right, let's see what the revision notes say about this opening. Let's see. It says H called the morning song relatable and intimate. Good opening. Keep. Fear should not be this quiet. This is the continuation of the veil thread from chapter 7 closing. Here, Eleanor names the wrongness directly. Fear should not be this quiet. It's shown through the absence rather than explained. This is exactly what O asked for. Protect this entire passage. Physical beat interrupted cognitive processing. Good. Keep the recording functional, already tight. Okay, so this... All right, let's look at Silver in the Morning Song explanation. Silver's delight that Eleanor heard the song is in character. It means the integration is progressing. Silver sees this as good news. The reader should feel the chill of it. Keep. Good cultural collision. Eleanor categorizes Silver experiences. She probed as dialogue tag setup is slightly chunky. Okay, so... Did I use the word probed twice? Let me look at that real quick. Probed. No. Okay, so I've only used it once. As they ready to leave the room, this time to the lower bowl because Eleanor was curious to see it, she... Do I need... Maybe I can just rephrase that whole sentence. As they ready to leave the room, this time to the lower bowl because Eleanor was curious to see it, she reached for answers. Let me get rid of all that. All right. What else did the revision notes say? So I got rid of the clunky dialogue tag. Overlong and explanatory sentence. Right here. Says, change wasn't finished. Stopped inside her. Okay, so... Eleanor's footsteps staggered. Eleanor's foot staggered. What was happening to her was actively ongoing, not an end stage. Eleanor's footsteps staggered. What was happening to her was actively ongoing. It was not an end stage yet. There we go. I think that is a little bit stronger. It says I should cut this part right here, the thinking of the Great Web later. It's narrating future intention. She's already compartmentalizing. Show it by her moving on, not by her announcing. She'll think about it later. Okay. So we cut that. All right, on to the next scene. The communal eating chamber was already alive when they arrived. Not chaotic. Alive the way a well-run field station was alive. Everyone moving with purpose and familiarity. The system humming because every person knew where to be without being told. I don't really like this paragraph. Communal eating chamber was already alive when they arrived. Not chaotic. Alive the way a well-run field station was alive. Everyone moved with purpose and familiarity, the system humming because every person knew where to be without being told. Okay, that's stronger. Rootkin carried trays. Balance Bound moved through in clean arcs, though there were hardly any of them here. No one shoved. No one lingered too long in doorways. Eleanor found herself watching the flows the way she watched animal trails, not for the individuals, but for the pattern. Then she saw him. Summer Fire beneath 1,000 songs stood near a cluster of blankets, choosing food with the same careful economy she'd seen in his eating. Precise motions, minimal waste, a body that looked carved for duty rather than comfort. He did not look toward her. For a moment, Eleanor felt a stupid human flare of indignation, as if she were owed his attention. Then he paused, still as stone. His head turned, slow, like he sensed weight on the air. His eyes found hers across the room. No warmth, no apology, just acknowledgement. He dipped his chin, a formal bow that made the people around him subtly shift, as if the gesture had meaning they all understood. Ugh, I've used this word gesture too many times. In fact, let's see how many times we've used it. 16 times. Okay. He dipped his chin, a formal bow that made the people around him... I don't like that. Shift subtly, as if the action had meaning they all understood. Then he moved on. His previous words echoed in her head. A repeat of the aloofness. Okay, that deserves its own paragraph. All right, let me read that from the top. No warmth, no apology, just acknowledgement. He dipped his chin, a formal bow that made the people around him shift subtly, as if the action had meaning they all understood. Then he moved on. His previous words echoed in her head, a repeat of the aloofness. Nor did I. Italicize that. She considered the words and his behavior. We should find a seat for you, Silver smiled then, gentle and maddening as she interrupted Eleanor's line of thought. They sat together at a table of rootkin this time, and Silver chatted amongst them like an old friend. They talked about routines, supplies, routes, sap shifts, and duties. Eleanor listened while she ate, fascinated. When she finished, Silver motioned to the flow of Balance Bound leaving the room. Shall we follow? You will see more of the Balance Bound day if we do. Absolutely, Eleanor was ready for more. The bath chambers they wandered into smelled like warm, sweet sap and pine. Eleanor had expected privacy, curtains, separate rooms, some sort of cultural scene she could hide behind. Instead, the space opened into a large wading pool pressed into the wood. It was filled with clear water with the faintest hint of steam settling over top. The terpene sharpness was stronger nearer to the water, the faintly resinous scent more muted. It was only in that moment that she realized she'd been smelling the same aromas everywhere, but here it was heightened, more suffusing. Rootkin and Balance Bound undressed in the same casual practicality they applied to eating. No coyness, no spectacle, no flirtation. Eleanor forced her eyes to behave like a scientist's. Baseline observations, she noted to herself. Mixed gender bathing without sexualization. That needs to be italicized. Inference. Nudity is not coded as intimacy here. Secondary inference. Intimacy is coded elsewhere. Song? Duty? Permission? Secondary observation, she noted suddenly. Eyes unable to stop their intake of information. No umbilicus on any body in the room. And the rootkin, no sex markers at all. She darted from one body to the next, and each confirmed the same. Not a belly button in sight on anyone, and the rootkin were less precise than a doll, as if they'd been modeled by a hand that had given up. As Silver began to disrobe beside her, setting her clothes on a small bench nearby, Eleanor couldn't help but look at the woman's stomach as well. Smooth. No umbilical scar. She had the same dimorphism without differentiation as the other rootkin. These details told Eleanor something critical that she wasn't sure how to reconcile yet. Silver, she asked, carefully, starting to undo her own clothing ties. Yes? How does propagation occur here? Propagation? Silver's head tilted with curiosity. Reproduction. What's the reproductive mechanism here? Mother, Silver answered with a smile, as if pleased she could assist. Eleanor wanted to groan inwardly. Everything led back to Mother. She had a million more questions, but as Silver finished undressing, Eleanor decided this might not be the place for it. She wasn't keen on the idea of discussing reproduction while naked with strangers. She and Silver finished, folded their things, Eleanor fighting off her discomfort as she struggled to act as they did, indifferent to bodies, all while trying to keep her focus clinical. She should have been mortified. She should have been on fire with embarrassment. She wasn't. That was the part that unnerved her most, and she wasn't sure if she could put it down to an internalized phenomenon or not. This would need to be explored further. She stepped into the water and felt the heat sink into her bones, loosening tension she hadn't realized she was carrying. Around her, bodies moved and spoke softly. The sound of it was almost domestic. Domestic captivity, her brain supplied, and she hated that it had to add the last word for her. It was peaceful. Nice. She and Silver leaned against the pool's edge. The water was warmer than skin temperature and silky to the touch, and as they relaxed into it, Eleanor couldn't help but assess it with her fingers. She rubbed the water between them. Oh my god, how do I use a word I can't even pronounce? Surfactant present. When she agitated the water, she noticed a strange sheen to it that glistened in the light. There was something saturating the water. She wanted to get a sample, but couldn't think how. Her muscles loosened, and Eleanor closed her eyes for a moment, truly soaking the water and atmosphere in. There was something in the water as well that fizzled against her skin like bursting bubbles. There were no bubbles present, but that didn't stop the creeping sensation that fluttered against her body, pulling at her attention and inviting her to reach for it. She tried to ignore it, but found her attention focused on the effort. When the bathing ended, the colony separated the way a river separates around stones. They watched the flow, and then they followed. When they stepped out of the water, Eleanor noted how it seemed to sheet off of her instead of bead. She dried faster than expected as well, she noted. Interesting. They dressed, and then followed the crowd. Rookin flowed downward into the trunk. Balance Bound moved upward, light-footed, vanishing into the canopy paths. The few slipped into side corridors Eleanor didn't recognize at all. Eleanor watched the system reform itself. Where do they go? She asked. Where Mother needs them, Silver replied. Eleanor's jaw tightened. Okay, but if I wanted to observe. To learn. Is there somewhere I'm allowed to go without someone escorting me like a toddler? Silver hesitated, the first real pause Eleanor had ever pulled from her. Then Silver smiled again. You may walk with me. Not freedom, not refusal. A compromise shaped like care. Eleanor watched a small group of Rookin peel away from the corridor lined with darker sap veins. They carried bundles wrapped in leaf cloth, moving fast, heads down. Fieldwork instinct sparked. Let's follow them, Eleanor said. Silver blinked, then nodded. And for the first time since waking in Homewood, Eleanor chose the direction of her own fate. All right, let's see if there's any revision notes for the bathing scene. Oh, and the summer sighting. Okay, says not chaotic, alive in a way while Roan Field Station was alive. Good comparison, grounds the alien and her professional experience. Keep. Summer sighting, good observation. It connects to the withered thread from chapter 10. His body's built for function, and function is wearing it down. Keep. Her indignation, good self-awareness. She catches herself wanting recognition from him and immediately identifies it as irrational. Keep. Okay, it says I should get rid of that. A repeat of aloofness is clunky framing. Okay. Let's get rid of that. His previous words echoed in her head. Or did I? There we go. Okay. What else? Silver interrupting Eleanor's analysis of summer is a nice structural beat. Okay, the bathing scene. H praises it, needs minor tightening. He says, it surprised me, but I think it works because you kept it focused on Eleanor's clinical observations. It didn't feel necessary. It felt like unnecessary. It felt like a cultural study. All data points. Let's They both praise the scientific perspective during the scene. Okay, so she should have been mortified. She should have been on fire with embarrassment. She wasn't. That was the part that unnerved her most. Kay flags this as a potentially confusing moment. But internalized phenomenon is vague enough to mean nothing. Okay, she wasn't sure if the calm was hers or borrowed. Is clearer and more unsettling. All right. She should have been mortified. She wasn't sure if she could put it down to an internalized phenomenon or not. This would need to be explored further. I don't know, I kind of like it, but I'm going to put the suggestion in here. All right, so we've got that for later. Water observations. Passage about pulling out our attention. Specific sensation pulling towards something beneath the water, toward the walls, or inward. I think I want to keep that vague, though. I like the idea of it being a little more difficult to surmise what it's coming from. Okay, the post-Beth flow and the compromise. For autonomy, frustration specific rather than generic. Not freedom. All right, so we're going to replace this sentence with, it wasn't freedom or refusal. It wasn't freedom or refusal, but rather a compromise shaped like care. Which is pretty much the title of the book. All right, I need to flag this for looking out at later. Let me make some additional revision notes. I think we can move on then. Okay, so Silver allowed her to wander after the rootkin and watch them work while they stocked supplies, tested securements, bundled fibers for transport, counted inventory, and other tasks she had no name for. They worked tirelessly and talked infrequently, but their quiet surety reinforced Eleanor's earlier observations. She and Silver followed another branching group of rootkin, this time into a side hallway without a curtain, into an area that was far less traversed. The walls here looked less fluid, the rooms less spacious, and when they took a few more steps in, Silver set a hand on Eleanor's arm and brought them to a stop. Eleanor took one last look at the side ahead, two rootkin with their hands pressed against the walls, smoothing it over and pushing, before she looked to meet Silver's eyes and question. This work requires attention we cannot give you here, Silver stated simply. We cannot go further. What are they doing? Eleanor asked instead of agreeing to turn back. They are molding Mother's spaces to fit Homewood's needs. Molding the spaces, Eleanor repeated. That's a present tense. Repeated, eyes drifting back to their work. They Had no tools of any kind, and yet she could swear the walls were moving under their touch, ever so slightly, like old clay being gently formed. It sent a shiver down Eleanor's spine, and she laid a hand against the wall beside her. Warmth seeped into her fingers, and for the first time, Eleanor thought of the interior as something more than just a tree. All right. And what are the final revision notes for this chapter? Can't believe we're already finished with chapter 11. That actually went by pretty fast. Okay, speaking over. H suggests a revision of this line and its good instinct. The simile works but could be sharper. No, I genuinely don't like that. I think I want to change that to fresh clay, though, than old clay. Fishing. Where did the clay comparison go? Ugh, let's just find it. Okay. She had no tools of any kind, and yet she could swear the walls were moving under their touch ever so slightly. Like... No, I do want it to be old clay gently formed. For the first time, Eleanor thought of the interior as something more than just a tree. Typo. More than, more than just a tree. Understates the realization. She's watching the tree cooperate. That's the word that should land. The walls aren't being shaped, they're yielding. That distinction matters for the lore. Okay, how do we want to say that then? All right, I think that's pretty much everything. Let's go to the global notes. H's pacing flag. Sometimes Eleanor notices so much at once during the bathing or the work scenes that it feels a bit like a list. The bathing scene has the densest observation stacking. Baseline observation, inference, secondary observation, no umbilici, Rupkin dimorphism, silver stomach. Each individual observation is good. Together they stack up. Consider whether one or two can be moved to a later scene. She'd notice more on subsequent baths to distribute the load. Because there is no future bath scene, so I might have to just ignore that one and keep it. Because there is literally nowhere else to put it. Let's see. K's flag on rolls. I got a little confused by the different rolls, like the rootkin and balance bound. The chapter uses both terms frequently and adds great web and neat cycle. H flag's the same. The quick, subtle reminder of who does what might help. Eleanor's field note format is actually perfect vehicle for this. One of her internal observations could include a brief role distinction note that serves the reader without being exposition, something like her mental model. Rootkin, labor and care, balance-bound authority and enforcement, weather, everything else. Okay, summary of the pass. The opening and closing are the chapter's strongest sections. The bathing scene is doing necessary world building through Eleanor's clinical lens and mostly working. The main work tightened the great web introduction, compressed bathing observations. Honestly, I'm going to keep it the way it is because I don't have anywhere else to put the bathing stuff, so that has to go there. Maybe I could put some... Maybe I could put some action sequences in there to make up for the dense internal thoughts. Because this right here is all internal thoughts, and I could see that being a little like your eyes glazing over as you read, that kind of thing. Eleanor forced her eyes to behave like a scientist's. Baseline observations, she noted. Obviously don't need to have that. Mixed gender bathing without sexualization. Inference, nudity is not coded as intimacy here. Let's see. Her eyes moved to the next form. Eyes moved to the next form. I think that's it. Her eyes moved to the next form. Secondary inference. Intimacy is coded elsewhere. Song, duty, permission. Secondary observations, she noted subtly, eyes unable to stop their intake of information. No umbilicus on any body in the room. All right, I think that's okay as a single paragraph. Yeah, I think that'll be all right. Okay. Now we need to feed chapter 12 into the system to get our revision notes. So let's highlight chapter 12. Ooh, chapter 12 is long. Okay. Okay, chapter 12. Chapter 12. All right. Yeah, I'm feeding my, well, I'm feeding it into Claude and using Claude to mush together all the beta reader feedback so I can kind of get one comprehensive list. It's been helpful so far. Surprisingly so. Although I think it'd be less helpful if I didn't have the beta reader feedback. All right, so it's thinking right now. Come on. All right. I'm wondering if I should take a break and do a word prompt. No, I really need to get these revisions done, especially if I want to publish this year. All right, let's start from the top. This is one of the manuscript's most important chapters. The summer debt payment scene is the emotional thematic centerpiece that all three readers responded to strongly. H calls it easily the biggest punch and says they had separated for a second to process it. Kay says the scene provides both immediate physical tension and deeper moral, ethical intrigue. Everything in this chapter exists to deliver that scene, which means the earlier sections need to be efficient rather than expansive. All right, so let's begin reading and we'll go back to the revision notes afterwards. Chapter 12, Scars. They arrived back to her room after the sun had already set and the mother tree was beginning to grow quiet in its own way, but Eleanor felt it was a day well spent. She learned more intricacies about Homewood, about how it operated, and at this point, gathering knowledge was the only thing she could capably manage. That realization left a cold stone in the pit of her stomach, but it flooded her with resolve as well. She had samples to store and nowhere to put them, so she decided to go get her test tube. Nobody had explicitly told her she couldn't. She placed a hand against the wall and felt for a pulse. It was slow, rhythmic, steady. The way was clear, or mostly clear at least. She poked her head out of her curtain and assessed the hallway. It was empty. She crept out, then began ascending toward the white storage room where her things had been stored, counting doors along the way to make sure she could find her way back. She found the way with relative ease, and every rootkin she passed did little more than acknowledge her presence in a way that was more uncomfortable than had she been questioned. After poking her head into a couple of different rooms, she finally found the one storing her clothes and tools. Hauling the tube back was more awkward than she thought it would be. What would normally fit in the palm of her hands now took 2 full arms to hold, and it was like hoisting a giant beam now, the tube longer than her own body. She garnered a few looks on her way back to her room, but nobody stopped or questioned her, even as the tube bounced and jostled with every awkward step. Once she was back in her room, she rolled the tube beside her phone with a heavy pant, then leaned against it to catch her breath. Only once her breathing smoothed did she begin slipping the samples she'd squirreled away inside of it. She would get back, she promised herself, staring down at her samples. They made her determination feel that much more real, and she almost smiled to herself in satisfaction. But when? The question could not resist emerging. She contemplated this, eyes wandering to the curtain closing off her room. She could try again now, but to what avail? She knew nobody would stop her. She knew which curtain to look for, but then what? What would she do once outside? Where would she go? She'd have no phone, no supplies, and she was miles away from camp at a normal size. Now, she sighed and crossed her arms. No, she had tried that already, and it had gotten her nowhere. She couldn't go anywhere until she had a resolution to the size situation, and no known science could accomplish that. Her only hope was finding the solution here and implementing it. With her mind on escape, Eleanor finally climbed into bed, thinking on her samples and what it would take to get everything back. She dreamed of home that night. It wasn't the kind of dream that came often. Usually when she slept, she dreamed of forests or falling or things she could not name. But this time she was in a warm yellow kitchen that smelled of sugar and vanilla and something faintly burnt. She was 10 years old again. Flour dusted the counter in her hands, and she stood on a chair so she could reach the mixing bowl. Her mother hovered nearby, pretending to supervise while really just letting Eleanor do most of the work herself. "Slow down," her mother said gently, though she was smiling. "You don't want to whip all the air out of it." "I know," Eleanor replied, stirring with exaggerated care. "It's supposed to be fluffy. You said." "I did." Her father came in then, already in his work clothes. Loosening his ties, he leaned against still in his work clothes. Loosening his ties, he leaned against the counter. "Hey there, birthday girl," he said. "Smells like a bakery in here." Eleanor beamed. It was rare for all 3 of them to be in the same room, not rushed, not distracted, just there. Watching, being together. She stirred the batter and felt important. Trusted. Safe. When she woke, the feeling lingered like the last warmth from an oven that had just been turned off. Her eyes opened slowly. The tree ceiling glowed faintly above her, moss cushioned her back, silk and leaf fiber brushed her skin. The dream slipped away, leaving behind a deep ache. It wasn't exactly for her parents. It was for home. She sat up and rubbed her eyes, blinking away the tightness in her chest. All right, let's see if there's any revision notes for that opening sequence. Samples and escape. It says I can compress test tube retrieval. Keeps the image, but the passage that follows where she contemplates escape, talks herself out of it, retreats chapter 8's conclusion. Here she arrives at the same conclusion again. Section could be halved. She retrieves the tube, stores her samples, and the final line is the only... Okay, she already tried that, and it gotten her nowhere. Okay, so I can slim it up here. So, when she was back, say she tried that already and it had gotten her nowhere. Okay. Escape logic beat you need. Everything between is Eleanor Reed deriving a conclusion she already reached. Okay, so this can all... Okay. Let me read that and see how that works. When she was back in her room, she rolled the tube beside her phone with a heavy pant, then leaned against it to catch her breath. Only once her breathing smoothed did she begin slipping the sample she'd swirled away inside of it. She would get back, she promised herself, staring down at the samples. They made her determination feel that much more real, and she almost smiled to herself in satisfaction. But when? The question could not resist emerging. She contemplated this, eyes wandering to the curtain closing off her room. She could try again now, but to what avail? No. So, I don't like how I have try repeated there twice. She contemplated this, eyes wandering to the curtain closing off her room. Escape was easy. But she tried that already, and it had gotten her nowhere. But when? The question could not resist emerging. She contemplated this, eyes wandering to the curtain closing off her room. Escape was easy, but she tried that already, and it got her nowhere. Her mind on... Since I used... Hey, Ursula. With her mind on... Say freedom. With her mind on freedom, Eleanor finally climbed into bed, thinking on her samples and what it would take to get everything back. All right, the dream sequence. It says all readers actually praised that. Okay, so there's nothing to cut in there. All right, so let's continue from where we stopped then. The curtain stirred. Silver stepped through as though she had been waiting just beyond it. A tray balanced neatly in her hands. Bright fruit, soft breads, clusters of seeds, and pale berries were arranged with care. She set it down on the small table and turned with a smile. "Did you sleep well?" Silver asked. "I think so," Eleanor said. "How do you always know when I'm awake?" "Mother," Silver replied. "Mother," Eleanor echoed at the same time. They both paused and smiled, though only one smile was genuine. "Right," Eleanor murmured with a dry laugh. "Should have guessed." Silver tilted her head. "Summer Fire Beneath 1,000 Songs thought you might like to see the canopy walks today. Would you?" "The what?" Silver's eyes lit. "They are paths grown along the upper branches between Homewood's boughs. From there you can see the whole forest." That sounds... Eleanor hesitated, then grinned despite herself. "Honestly, that sounds amazing." "Splendid." Silver set the tray closer. "Eat, and I will return." Eleanor reached for a piece of fruit, still thinking about kitchens and cake batter and hands dusted with flour and wondering how far away home really was now. It didn't take long for her to finish eating. Alone and satiated, Eleanor's eyes scoped the room, still fascinated by the space. Eleanor crouched near one of the few seams where the floor met the wall. Up close, the wood wasn't wood. It was layered, fibers braided around softer channels, each one faintly warm, some pulsed, almost like capillaries. She leaned closer until her breath fogged the surface. There, in the groove, a film of amber resin and something like fungal lace, pale threads crossing and knotting as if they'd been laid with intention. Not mold, not rot. Not mold. Infrastructure. She cataloged it automatically. Structural fibers for load, fluid channels for transport, resin seals for repair, and the whole thing responsive to pressure, heat, contact. A superorganism that built its own hallways. A city that healed. Her stomach tightened with a familiar thrill. If this was the building, what did the nervous system look like? When Silver returned, she carried a folded bundle of fabric in her arms. "New clothes," she said, setting them on the bed. They were soft earth tones and leaf-woven cloth, light but warm, trousers and a fitted top similar to what she'd seen other balance-bound wearing. Silver helped her step into them, adjusting ties and smoothing the fabric as though this were the most natural thing in the world. Once dressed, they left Eleanor's room and headed upward through the tree. The passageways curved gently as they climbed, the wood soft and alive beneath Eleanor's feet. Curtains marked doorways, some swaying open just long enough for her to glimpse their interiors. One stopped her short. Inside, a cluster of tinier forest folk sat around a low table, chattering softly while a slightly larger rootkin showed them how to weave thin strands of fiber. Children. Eleanor felt something twist in her chest. So there was a juvenile phase. Questions burned in her, but she swallowed them. Not yet. It felt too intimate, too loaded. They continued upward until the passage opened into light. Eleanor gasped. The canopy unfurled around them in sweeping, breathtaking layers. Massive branches stretched outward like the spines of the world, connected by bridges of woven bark, vine, and delicate white spider silk. Spherical dwellings hung to the limbs like nests, glowing faintly from within. Balancebound moved through it all with graceful purpose, some leaping between platforms, other pausing to listen to the wind or lay their palms against the bark. Silver let her stare. This is where the balancebound commune with the greater forest, she said softly, and where they reside. Summer lives up here, Eleanor said as the thought occurred to her. Silver smiled. He does. I can show you to his dwelling, if you would like. Every instinct in Eleanor screamed no. No, she said quickly. I'd rather walk the bridges. You are free to do as you please here. Free, Eleanor snorted. Not quite the word I'd use. Silver blinked. Where would you like to go? Home. My home. Not this one. Maybe the ellipsis here is earned. Not... Silver's expression smoothed into gentle amusement. But Mother is home. Eleanor didn't answer. They walked. The bridges swayed slightly underfoot, stretching between branches so high that Eleanor couldn't see the ground anymore. Wind whispered through leaves far above and far below, the rustling a constant white noise above the cries of insects and birdsong. Then came another sound. Grunts, strained breaths, the crack of wood on wood, the hiss of magic. They followed it to a dome grown from twigs and flowering vines. Inside, Balancebound and Rootkin gathered around a circular clearing. Two Rootkin were locked in combat, moving fast, weapons flashing. Magic sparked between them every strike. Eleanor stiffened. Are they... training, Silver said, laying a steady hand on her arm. Not war. The duel was brutal but controlled. Each blow was answered, each spell countered. Finally, the two fighters broke apart and bowed deeply to one another. Eleanor realized several familiar figures were watching. Dusted Snow, Wilting Willow, Golden Leaf. Dusted Snow noticed her and smiled, raising a hand. Debt Bearer, he called lightly. Come, sit with us. Eleanor hesitated, then stepped forward, feeling the strange weight of being watched by an entire world that was no longer her own. I don't think we need this part. By an entire world. The living benches curled around the sparring floor, grown from the tree itself and cushioned with rich moss. Eleanor and Silver settled onto one of them, the soft surface sinking under their weight. The air inside the dome smelled sharp and lush, like crushed leaves and rain. Who shall be next? Dusted Snow against the water's edge called, rising to his feet. His silver eyes glinted as he scanned the gathered Balancebound and Rootkin. A few figures stirred, murmuring amongst themselves. Before any of them could step forward, Wilting Willow's voice cut cleanly through the noise. Let us see the debt-bearer's prowess. Eleanor felt her stomach drop. Wilting Willow rose with elegant ease, her pale hair spilling down her back like trailing vines. A smile touched her lips, but it was thin, tight, predatory. I will happily spar with her. Excuse me, Eleanor blurted, already halfway to panic. Before she could protest further, Dusted Snow clapped his hands together with a sharp delight. A fine suggestion. Silver leaned toward Eleanor, eyes wide. You do not have to. But Wilting Willow was already stepping into the ring, and all eyes were on Eleanor now. Curiosity, anticipation, a hunger she didn't understand. I'm going to get rid of curiosity. I don't really like that there. But Wilting Willow was already stepping into the ring, and all eyes were on Eleanor now. Anticipation, a hunger she didn't understand. Her pride betrayed her. Fine, Eleanor muttered, rising to her feet. But this is just for fun, right? Wilting Willow's smile deepened. Of course. They faced one another on the woven floor. A rootkin hurried forward, carrying two long, wickedly curved thorns. Each was as tall as Eleanor, its surface ridged and dark with old sap. One was placed into Eleanor's hands. It was heavier than it looked. The thorn trembled slightly as she lifted it, and she had to adjust her grip twice just to keep it from tipping. All right, let me, before I go further, look at the revision notes. Okay, morning structure and observation. Minor note here. Okay, K says structural fibers for load, fluid channels for transport, resin for refit. Could be tightened. K suggests using simple actions rather than listing fragments. I keep the list format here. It's Eleanor's internal field notes, and the fragment structure reflects how she catalogs, but the following sentence, the whole thing responsive to pressure, heat, contact, is a reinstatement of the list. Cut it. Okay. So let's go back up to where she is cataloging that. Where was it? Okay, structural fibers for load, fluid channels for transport, resin seals for repair. A superorganism that built its own hallways, a city that healed. Okay. Okay, it says the children's scene is good. Canopy walk, efficient scene setting. Okay, now we're down to the sparring scene. All right, from the top. Begin. Wilting Willow didn't hesitate. She came forward in a blur of pale motion, her spear flicking out in a testing jab that stopped inches from Eleanor's chest. Eleanor yelped and barely managed to lift her own thorn in time, the two scraping together with a dry, shrieking sound. Wilting Willow circled her, light on her feet. Eleanor's heart pounded as she tried to follow, her weapon clumsy and slow. Another strike. Eleanor blocked it, barely. The impact jolted her arms. Then Wilting Willow shifted her grip, spun low, and swept Eleanor's legs out from under her. Eleanor hit the floor hard, the air ripping from her lungs. For a moment, all she could see was white. Wilting Willow laughed softly and approached, then offered out a hand. You have much to learn, Debt-Bearer. Eleanor took her hand and pulled herself upright, her cheeks burning. Eleanor, she said. Just Eleanor. Eleanor, Wilting Willow repeated, studying her. Come find me when you wish to spar. We will make a warrior of you yet. The match ended there, but the ache in Eleanor's body didn't fade. As she and Silver stepped out of the dome, Silver suddenly gasped. Your arm! Eleanor looked down. A thin line of blood was already seeping through her sleeve. Oh. Well, that explains the stinging. Recovery room. Now. I'm fine, really. No. Silver's voice was firm in a way Eleanor hadn't heard before, so she nodded mutely and followed. The infirmary was quiet and cool. It smelled like fresh herbs and something sharp underneath it, an astringent bite that reminded Eleanor of alcohol wipes and field kits. She sat on a bed of thick moss as Silver gently dabbed green paste along the cut. It tingled, then soothed, then hummed faintly against her skin. Silver worked with practiced ease, hands steady as she smoothed mending cream along Eleanor's skin. Golden light seemed to shimmer beneath Silver's fingers, a glittering shadow that warmed the space between them. A thin, tremulous tether sparkled in the air, connecting Silver's hands to the interior wall of the mother tree. It trembled and waved. The paste began to tingle, and her skin seemed to tighten beneath it. What is this stuff exactly? Eleanor asked, watching carefully. Mending cream. And what's in it? Grundle root, mother sap, crimson folly, a few other common herbs that take away the sting. Eleanor watched the green paste thrum against her skin, and the burning that had stung moments before evaporated with a final throb. This stuff is incredible. Why isn't everyone covered in it all the time? The rootkin looked up and met her eyes, and as she did, Eleanor touched the paste along her forearm with 2 fingers. She tested the viscosity, warm, faintly tacky, the same weight as something between gel and resin. She smeared a streak of it across her clothes, allowing the fibers to absorb the residue without Silver noticing. She would need to find a way to transfer a sample later. It is because healing spends. Eleanor opened her mouth to demand a rational explanation again. Before she could, the doorway darkened. Summer stepped inside without announcement, as if Homewood had simply exhaled him into the room. He took in the scene in one glance, Eleanor on moss, Silver hovering close, the faint shimmer of the paste still working. His gaze dropped to Eleanor's arm, then to Silver's hands, then to the jar. A subtle change crossed his expression, something like irritation, but not at Eleanor. Enough, Summer said. Silver froze. Eleanor blinked. Excuse me? Summer didn't repeat himself. That should be did not. Or did not repeat himself. He crossed the room and set 2 fingers lightly on the jar's lid. The motion was gentle. The effect was absolute. Silver's hand stilled as though the command had been threaded through her tendons. The wound is closed, he said. Stop feeding it. Silver lowered her head. She is still in the change. Her skin is slow to knit. It has knit. Eleanor's stomach tightened. The way he spoke wasn't cruel. It wasn't angry. It was worse. Certain. Wasn't cruel or angry. It was worse. Certain. Like a person reading a number off a scale. Eleanor pushed herself up, half defensive, half furious at being talked over. It's my arm. Summer's eyes flicked to hers, and in that glance she felt something cold and deep, something inevitable. Yes, he agreed. It is your arm. A beat. And the spending does not belong to you. Eleanor hated how the words landed in her body, how they made her feel both sheltered and trapped in the same breath. In the same instance. Silver's voice came soft. Summerfire, I know. He didn't look at Silver when he said it. He looked at Eleanor. He did not look at Silver when he said it. He looked at Eleanor. And then he did something that made Eleanor's throat go tight for no logical reason at all. He took the jar from Silver's hands. I think we can get rid of this. Summer set it down on the table beside Eleanor. He rolled his sleeve up. Eleanor stared at the underside of his forearm. The skin there was marked with faint lines, pale scars that looked less like cuts and more like... Remove this. Ellipsis. And more like old stress fractures and something that had been healed too many times. Too often. Too fast. What are you doing? Eleanor asked, voice flat because she didn't trust it not to shake. Summer didn't answer with words. He placed his palm against the wood of the infirmary wall. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a faint glow gathered under his skin, traveling along his veins like light moving through a root system. It pulled at his wrist, brightened, and Eleanor felt it the way she felt a pressure change before a storm. Summer exhaled, slow and controlled. The glow bled out of him into the wall. The room's warmth shifted, subtle but real, like the tree had taken a deeper breath. We'll get rid of this metaphor. The room's warmth shifted, subtle but real. Silver's eyes lowered, reverent, and Eleanor suddenly understood that she was watching a kind of payment. Not to a person, to a system. Summer's fingers flexed once against the wood, and his knuckles went white for the briefest moment. His expression didn't change, but Eleanor saw a tiny hitch at the corner of his mouth, like pain that had been trained to stay quiet. When he pulled his hand away, the glow in his veins was gone. He turned back to Eleanor. His sleeve fell down to cover the scars. Now, he said, voice even again, the debt is not on Silver. Eleanor stared at him, anger flaring hot, because the alternative was something softer she did not want to touch yet. So you just take it? Eleanor's gaze held hers without flinching. Yes. Why? For a moment he didn't answer. His gaze went past her shoulder, not evasive, just placed elsewhere. His throat moved in a single swallow, the kind that looked practiced, like swallowing words was a routine task. Then his eyes returned to hers, steady, and whatever heat had sparked in him stayed behind his stare. Then, without drama, without speechifying, he said the simplest thing in the world, like it was the only option he'd ever been offered. Because someone must. He nodded once to Silver, a dismissal and a reassurance in the same gesture. In the same motion. Go. Silver left immediately, as if relieved. Eleanor didn't move. She watched Summer instead. Does it hurt? She asked, and she hated that her voice went quiet on the last word. Summer's expression finally shifted. Not fear, not surprise, just the faintest tightening, like she'd named something he preferred to carry unspoken. That's another 3 for... Summer's expression finally shifted. We can get rid of that. Summer's expression finally shifted. It was the faintest tightening, like she'd named something he preferred to carry unspoken. He looked down at her arm, at the sealed skin, at the proof of what he'd just paid for. Then he looked back at her. "We all end," he said. And then he added, softer, almost not meant for her, "I am simply trained to make it clean." They did not speak again after this. Summer gave her a courteous nod, then excused himself, Silver swooping back in to fill the void. Midday light filtered down through the leaves and spilled in through thin crevices in the bark. Eleanor stood. 5 days left. "I want to go outside." Silver hesitated. "Outside? Of Homewood?" "Yes. I just need air, space." After a long moment, Silver nodded and led her down. And that is chapter 12. So let's go back to the revision notes and see what they say. Let's see. The sparring scene. Okay, Kay's note. The abrupt physicality of the sparring match. Some readers may wish for a slightly clearer lead-in to Eleanor accepting the challenge. I think the acceptance should feel slightly too fast. That's the point. She knows it's stupid and does it anyway. Mending cream is transitional. Silver introduces the cost of healing song concept right before Summer demonstrates it. Good structural keep. Okay, protect almost entirely that scene. Okay. Only once her breathing smoothed did she begin slipping the samples sheets squirreled away inside of it. Okay, that's fixed. With heavy pants is flagged. With a heavy pants. Okay. Eleanor echoed. At the same time is redundant. We'll get rid of that. She looked at her. All right, I think that one's gone already. Okay, global note. This chapter runs long because it contains 4 distinct scenes. The payment scene justifies the length, but the earlier sections need to be efficient to earn the reader's patience for the climax. The test tube reveal and the escape redeliberation are the most compressible. The dream should be untouched, the canopy and sparring are transitional, they get Eleanor wounded so she can arrive at the infirmary where Summer finds her. They need to be brisk, which they mostly are. Summary of this past. The summer debt payment scene is one of the 2 or 3 protected. Dream sequence is another protected section. Okay, I think we have finished chapter 12. Shit hot, we are moving along today, man. I don't know if I want to do a whole nother chapter, though. I don't know. Let me get chapter... Oh, thank you, Bob. I know, we actually did pretty good today. Let's see, because we are on chapter 13 now. Ooh, fire didn't work. Why didn't fire work? There, now it did. Oh, maybe it was too soon after the previous one. That'd be my guess. All right. It should queue them. Yeah, no clue why it's not queuing them, but yeah, that was weird. All right, let me go ahead and feed chapter 13 into Claude and at least get the revision notes going. All right, where are you at? It's chapter 13. Oh shit, it's the wake up song. I love this song.
Get the fuck out of bed, bitch, go. Get up, and they got go. Time to wake up, bitch, get up. Get up, get up.
Oh, we have a word prompt. All right, let's do that then. All right, let's get up a writing thing. All right, ravage, taught, die, and antidote. All right, let's clear our workspace. Ravage, taught, die, antidote. Okay, those are good words. Ravage, taught, die, antidote. All right, excuse me.
Unbelievable.
What do we want to write about? All right, I think I'm gonna tie die and antidote together. Let's see. Taught and ravage. Let me write these down. Ravage, taught, die, antidote. Ravage, taught, die, antidote. Ah, yes, this prompt has the making of 50 Shades. Yeah, probably. All right. Ooh, that actually gives me an idea. Maybe we'll do a slightly spicy prompt. Let's see, because the word ravage really does invite it. And taught, yeah. All right. So maybe we'll go with something like somebody being bound. Why would they need an antidote, though? There is only one antidote for you, baby. That's funny. Let's see. How do I want to start this? And we decided tense doesn't matter, right? So, Bob, since you did the prompts, can I use any tense for these words? Or does it have to be in the current tense that they are in? Ravage, taught, die, antidote. Yeah, okay, so any tense is fine. All right. All right, I think I know what I'm gonna go with. The air was sour with the smell of sweat and liquor. The air was sour with the smell of sweat and liquor. Two bodies lay across the bed. The air was sour with the smell of sweat and liquor. Two bodies lay prone across the bed. Let me make sure prone is the right word. Define prone. Lying on one's front with face downward. Okay, so I think we'll make just one. Okay, the air was sour with the smell of sweat and liquor. Darkness. Darkness. How do I want to phrase this? Sour with the smell of sweat and liquor. The air was sour with the smell of sweat and liquor. The room was dark, only the faint white glow from the television lighting up her face as she took the space in. Sweat curled along her upper lip. She rested her head back against the bed frame. She gave another gentle tug with her arms. The silk strappings taut and holding her firmly in place. Beside her, the man lay prone and unconscious. Unconscious. All right, the air was sour with the smell of sweat and liquor. The room was dark, only the faint white glow from the television lighting up her face as she took the space in. Sweat curled along her upper lip as she rested her head back against the bed frame. She gave another gentle tug with her arms, silk strapping taut and holding her firmly in place. Beside her, a man lay prone and unconscious. She looked over to him and inspected his still face. His hair was dyed a bleached blonde. Bath time. Have a good bath, Bob. She looked over to him and inspected his still face. His hair was dyed a bleach blonde. His eyebrows No. I don't think I want to use dyed that way. She looked over to him and inspected his still face. His breathing came in uneasy spurts. He would be dead soon enough. Okay, the air was sour with the smell of sweat and liquor. The room was dark, only the faint white glow from the television lighting up her face as she took the space in. Sweat rolled along her upper lip as she rested her head back against the bed frame. She gave another gentle tug at her with her arms, the silk strapping taut and holding her firmly in place. Beside her, a man lay prone and unconscious. She looked over to him and inspected his still face. His breathing came in uneasy spurts. He would be dead soon enough. She sighed and thought back to the night before, to their time together. He'd ravaged her thoroughly, but she had a job to do. It was only a mark. A mission. Simple task. A simple task. But she'd allowed herself to be bound. And now she was stuck. Her eyes tracked over to her purse sitting on the small table in the corner. Antidote was in there. She couldn't reach it. She sighed again. Well, this would be a fun story for housekeeping. Couldn't get out of here before they arrived. Well, that's it. I've used all the words. No, I didn't use die yet. Okay, her eyes tracked over to her purse sitting on the small table in the corner. The antidote was in there, but she couldn't reach it. She sighed again. Well, this would be a fun story for housekeeping if she couldn't get out of here before they arrived. Out of here before they arrived. As she considered her options, started to plan ahead. They're finding a way to undo her findings. She'd need to get out of here without being spotted. There's hair dye in her purse as well. There's hair dye back in her own room. Now she just had to figure out how to get out of the bindings. Okay. I think that is going to be good enough we're just going to save that. I used all the words. And that was from 410. All right. And I think I'm going to wrap it up there. It's 5:30. And we finished 2 chapters. I don't want to get a third one started. So yeah, I think that's all I'm going to do for this morning. So thank you so much for tuning in. And I will see you in the next one. Until next time. Bye.
Our time here is over. Our time here is past. It went by so swiftly. It went by so fast. But here we all are, just saying goodbye. We'll meet up again soon. Watch the hour fly. So goodbye, my lovelies. Goodbye, my sweet dears. I wish you all well. Please hold back those tears. Our time will return when our fates twist again. So keep your chin up and stay strong until then. Just look to the sky and remember the sun. Remember the good days. Remember the fun. This goodbye is short term. This goodbye is bittersweet. Thank you so much for coming. You make me complete. So goodbye, my lovelies. Goodbye, my sweet dears. I wish you all well. Please hold back those tears. Our time will return when our fates twist again. So keep your chin up and stay strong until then. Just look to the sky and remember the sun. Remember the good days. Remember the fun. This goodbye is short term. This goodbye is bittersweet. Thank you so much for coming. You make me complete. This goodbye is short term. This goodbye is bittersweet. Thank you so much for coming. You make me complete.